Tuesdays we spend with Dr. Bob Olivieri from Olivieri Chiropractic, and he's in the midst of a 9-part series, Hidden Secrets Why You Can't Lose Weight. And we're now on, I believe, week number 4, is that correct?
We are, Phil. We're going to be talking about the thyroid-fat loss connection today.
The thyroid-fat loss connection, all right. Are we going to talk about Hashimoto's syndrome?
We are. We're going to address that because that's very important.
Well, I say that because that's one of the, I like to pick up on some of the things that you say, and that sounds pretty fancy for a layperson like myself to be able to talk about. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but you'll get into all that.
Yes, we are. We're going to talk about it. But it's one of the hidden causes why people that still suffer from thyroid symptoms and haven't really had their no matter what they actually do, they still suffer from these symptoms. And the reason why is there's an underlying cause of that. And we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes.
Okay. Dr. Bob Olivieri from Olivieri Chiropractic on Route 9 in Rio Grande. Always fascinating. And of course, we'll tell you how you can, if you missed any of these series or any of these episodes, we'll tell you how you can get to that online.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk about the connection between thyroid and actually trying to lose weight. Thyroid hormone is absolutely fascinating. First of all, thyroid disease is rampant in the United States, and it's hidden in a lot of, it goes undetected for many reasons. But one of the biggest reasons that it does go undetected is because it presents with so many different symptoms. Lots of times you'll start to see people start to lose hair very early. You'll start to lose hair on their head, also around their eyebrows. There's diarrhea, constipation. There's a lot of anxiety and depression. Weight gain is rampant with this. Lots of times people are looking at other hormones rather than thyroid hormone as a cause to this. And quite often what they'll do is they'll actually just screen for a thyroid problem. And in a couple minutes, we're going to talk about actually the lab tests that are actually normally performed and what may, why you might want to look a little bit deeper than just running some standard blood work. So the standard blood work that you would normally look at for someone is just looking at a TSH, a T3, T4, which are basic hormones. But when we start to talk about really evaluating a thyroid problem, you have to look much deeper to that. So in our next segment, we're going to talk about that. So when people are suffering from all of these symptoms, such as weight gain, brain fog, like starting to get some memory loss, anxiety, depression, you wouldn't normally think of that. You wouldn't normally think of a thyroid. You start to think, okay, what's wrong with my brain? Something along those lines. But thyroid hormone affects every single cell in the body. It's fascinating. It's one of the very few hormones that actually can penetrate through the cell and into the nucleus. So let's say we're talking about bone, okay? Bone, when it starts to go bad, what do you get? Osteoporosis, right? So you wouldn't normally think of osteoporosis related to thyroid hormone, right? We wouldn't normally do that. Mm-hmm. It also affects muscle, so you're getting muscle and joint ache. Every single cell, you name it, no matter what it is. So your intestines, so if you're getting diarrhea and constipation, some of the cellular activity that thyroid hormone affects, if there's a blockage of the ability for the thyroid hormone to actually get into that cell, it's going to cause disturbance within that. So it's just a fascinating hormone because no matter what you do, no matter what bodily function you're achieving, thyroid hormone influences it. But if you're going to address trying to treat thyroid hormone, you have to look at many other issues. You have to look at what we talked about earlier. You have to look at blood sugar regulation. Greatly affects thyroid hormone. We talked about early cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Stress greatly affects thyroid hormone. What we talked about last week, gut function.
Right.
Absolutely, a leaky gut greatly affects thyroid hormone. So when you're starting to get, and the purpose of this series is to show the integration of so many other systems that are involved that affects every single function in your body. But thyroid hormone is the big one that starts to drive your body.
It's interesting, Dr. Bob, just thinking here that doctors almost have to be like detectives because when you have symptoms and you have issues, there could be many underlying causes. And how do you figure out which cause is actually affecting the condition that you're presenting as a doctor?
Phil, that's a great point. Most functional medicine practitioners consider themselves the great detectives. That's what they consider. Mm-hmm. But what they have to do is gather up a battery of tests, not standard tests, to be able to look for the underlying causes. And instead of just saying, doing something linear, saying, okay, these 2 or 3 blood tests are off a little bit, so we're going to put you on, if you're suffering from hypothyroidism, which we're going to talk about in a minute, we're going to give you some Synthroid to boost a little bit more of that. Why not looking for some underlying causes? Because we just mentioned 3 systems that can affect your thyroid hormone, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to go through that in the next segment here. We're going to talk about multiple systems. And guess what? It all starts in your brain.
Really?
So we're going to go from your brain all the way through your liver and your colon, and every single one of these symptoms affects how your thyroid is going to function. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's like really fascinating. So you're absolutely right. You have to do detective work to be able to find out what are the sources that may be influencing the thyroid. It could be the thyroid itself, but as you're going to see in just a couple minutes, that quite often is not the case. The problem is not just the thyroid. It's being influenced by other factors and pathways.
We're talking with Dr. Bob Olivieri. The series is 9 hidden secrets why you might not be losing weight. We'll get back to Dr. Bob in just a few minutes here. I'm going to be with Dr. Bob Olivieri from Olivieri Chiropractic. He's talking about his Feel Great Gait program. Also, this particular series is 9 hidden reasons. 9 secrets.
9 hidden secrets.
9 hidden secrets on why you can't lose weight.
Right.
And today, what are we talking about, Dr. Bob?
So we're talking about the thyroid fat loss connection. And so the effect of the thyroid gland on actually the ability to lose weight. But also, hopefully, we're going to cover enough information of why the thyroid gland is just so important and why you need to make sure that you're keeping a healthy thyroid and other systems that are influenced by and the effect that you're having on your thyroid. So I'm going to talk a little bit about thyroid physiology. This is kind of a little bit complicated, but it's actually, hopefully I'm going to break it down to where it's kind of simple.
Okay.
So what happens lots of times is if you don't understand all the different steps for thyroid hormone to be converted and to get to the cells where it needs to be active, if you don't understand that there's multiple steps along there, then you're going to see that you're going to get really frustrated, especially as a physician, because the reality of it is lots of times it's treated with a medication, which is something like Synthroid, and only 1 out of the 8 steps that we're going to talk about does Synthroid actually affect. So when you're talking about how thyroid hormone is made, it really kind of starts up in the brain. So you have to have the presence of serotonin and dopamine, which are neurotransmitters. Serotonin is your happy hormone. And you have to be able to have serotonin in order to be able to stimulate an area in the brain called your hypothalamus. Mm-hmm. Hypothalamus in there will stimulate the pituitary gland. Now the pituitary gland is amazing. Many glands many hormones actually start up in the pituitary. So the pituitary will go, and quite often, like we talked about in one of the shows, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis has to be working. That particular axis has to be working in order for you to be able to produce adrenaline. Well, the same thing with thyroid. So the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis has to be working. So it's going to go from the hypothalamus to the pituitary to the thyroid. It's going to stimulate the thyroid. From there, your thyroid hormone now, it's going to release the thyroid hormone, and it's going to release T4 and T3. Now, T4 is in its abundance. 93% of actually the hormone that's being produced by your thyroid is T4. However, T4 is inactive. It's not going to do anything. It has to be converted into T3, which is the active hormone. So when you get blood work, somebody's going to be looking at TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, T3 and T4. That's the typical blood work that somebody will order. So you're looking at the active and the inactive form. So let's say that the thyroid releases T4 and T3. Well, the T3 is going to work regionally. T3 is active, so it's going to work within the area of your thyroid. By the way, your thyroid's located right at the base of your neck, right up underneath your chin. Okay. And it's sitting up where the little bump is in your throat. Mm-hmm. Okay, your thyroid and cricoid cartilage there. So it's going to work locally there. Now, what happens to the 93% that's inactive? Well, remember we said thyroid hormone influences every single cell in your body, all the way down to your toes, right? So it has to get there. So in order to get there, it has to jump in your blood system, right?
If it's not inactive, then it will become active, right?
Right, mm-hmm. But that's a great step. But here's the thing. It has to go through multiple steps to become active. Okay. So what will happen is, in order to get down to your toes, right, it has to bind onto a protein. Mm. It has to go onto a binding protein. So it has to be transported to the area. So there's a binding issue. What if it doesn't bind to the protein?
That's not going to get there.
Right. So what if there's not enough binding proteins around?
Then you're going to be missing it and won't be active.
And what if there's too much binding proteins? There's also going to be another thing. Then it has to be transported to the area. Then it has to be converted to the tissues. Initially, what it does is it's going to go to your liver and it's going to go to your gut to be transported there, and then it's going to be converted into the active form, which is T3. Then it has to go to the cells that it's going to go and try to help, which just use bone tissue. Okay, it's going to go there. Now, if there's a problem on the cell wall that won't let it get into the cell, because you don't want anything just penetrating a cell, if there's an actual receptor, what we call a receptor site problem, in other words, it can't attach to the cell it needs to get into, that's an issue right there. And then if it doesn't get in and it doesn't make the response inside at the nucleus that it's supposed to. So we just talked about all these different possible defects. And I'm going to go into detail about this.
There's a lot of steps there, Doctor.
There is a lot of steps, but guess what? This is really important. Synthroid, your thyroid medication, only addresses one of those steps.
Really?
It's the only one that affects is one. So why do I still have thyroid symptoms when all my labs are coming back normal? Because number one, there could be a conversion or a transport or a binding issue and all these other issues we're going to talk about in a second. Number two, what's going on here is you might not have a thyroid problem at all. You may have an autoimmune problem, which is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And that trumps everything. So we're going to talk about that in the next set.
All right. Any time to meet with Dr. Bob Olivieri. We're in part 3 of part 4. Don't mean to confuse you, but we're talking about thyroid today. It is 9 hidden secrets why you might not be losing weight, and this is one in a series of 9. Fascinating stuff, Dr. Bob.
Yes, we hold a thyroid workshop in our office every 2 weeks. So I go into a lot more detail. I probably explain it a little bit better when we have slides and pictures to be able to show you this. And we are having one not this Thursday, but next Thursday. They're extremely well attended. There's never any obligation, but if you really want to learn about thyroid physiology and why, what are some of the things that you can actually do to help with your thyroid symptoms when you're still suffering, we try to work with your patient's medical doctor to be able to try to come to a conclusion here to try to make your life better quality, and all those symptoms that you're talking about with the diarrhea and the constipation and the hair loss and the fatigue and the anxiety and depression. Hopefully they all clear up. Hopefully they all go away. So, and you'll understand why when you come to this workshop, why they're all integrated. Every single one of these, from the neurotransmitters into your head, because remember we just talked about thyroid physiology all starts in your head. Serotonin and dopamine go into your hypothalamic pituitary, thyroid axis. Really, really, really important to be able to understand that, because if you don't have a pill for that, and there is no pill for any of that, but there are a lot of different things that you can do for it to clear up that systemic inflammation and all those things, all the topics that we're going to be talking about in here. There's a ton of things you can do to get yourself healthy and get your body functioning again. So this really kind of all starts with, how do you really know whether you have a problem or not? It really starts with a really good blood chemistry. And like I said, if you're only doing TSH, T3, T4, which is really the standard of care, you're really kind of missing all these other conversion things. So I often get asked, why did somebody else not order these? I go, it's really clear. No matter what it is, it doesn't really matter what your diagnosis is, whether it's an underconversion, overconversion, whether it's a binding issue, whether it's a transport issue, and all those things we just got done talking about. It doesn't really matter, because you only have really one bullet, and the bullet is Synthroid, Levoxyl. Anything that's going to be treating just that thyroid conversion. That's it. I mean, the thyroid problem right there at your thyroid gland. Not all those other problems that actually contribute to it. So, why do all those other tests? Because it doesn't really matter if it's high or low. It doesn't matter if your only bullet is a pill. So
you're testing for that one aspect.
Right, but you're testing for the only aspect that you have the capability of treating, right? And so in our case, we have a solution for every single one of those steps, all along those 8 different steps. So it's extremely important for me to get this blood work, because I need to know what I'm dealing with up front. It's not really important to know if you're only going to address it with one pill. And usually when we address our audience, how many people have been to an endocrinologist? Maybe been 2, 3, 4. Hands stay up. 5 people. Did you get a different answer? You might change medications. You may up and down the regulation, which is a real art in itself, and you have to do that, and that's why we love to work with medical doctors to be able to do that. But the reality of it is it's still only adjusting one point. So the big thing is to get the proper blood chemistry. So in our office, when we get a blood chemistry, we get a complete CBC and chem profile, metabolic profile. But when you're looking at just the thyroid hormones, you have to get TSH. Yes, you have to get total T4. You have to get free T4, which is actually floating around. You have to get total T3. You have to get free T3. You have to get T3 uptake to be able to evaluate some of the conversion. And then you must look for thyroid antibodies. You have to know whether you are dealing with an autoimmune condition or not. Because if you have Hashimoto's or you have Graves', you do not have a thyroid problem, a primary thyroid problem. You have an autoimmune problem that chose to attack your thyroid. There's a massive difference there when you're trying to manage that from a functional medicine or a nutritional standpoint. You have to really understand that. So if you did not get the TPO, like a thyroid peroxidase antibodies, or you get any thyroid globulin antibodies, if you don't get the TGBs, you're missing it. You gotta get that. So that should be the standard. And I'm telling you, when I first started this, nobody was ordering it. I don't care what specialist you were, nobody was ordering it because it didn't matter to them because there was still no pill for it. But if you got an autoimmune problem that's attacking because if you have an autoimmune problem, that means your body's attacking itself. So if today it decides to go to your thyroid, they call it Hashimoto's. If tomorrow it goes to your joints, it's rheumatoid arthritis. If it's the next day it's in your gut, it's celiac. If the next day it's in your brain, it's MS. So the rule of thumb is for somebody that's treating you whole body holistically is if you have an autoimmune problem, you better start digging for other ones because it may be attacking a different tissue tomorrow. So here's something novel. How about building up your immune system to try to actually make it stronger so your body doesn't start to attack itself, right? Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Right? But there's no pill for that. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for a doctor to do that. It's a lot of work to do that. That's what functional medicine doctors do. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at some of these underlying causes. So if 70% of the people walking around with a thyroid problem have Hashimoto's and have an autoimmune contributing factor to that, don't you think you want to go and get that evaluated?
70%.
70%. Some statistics and papers that I have at my office are up to 80%.
So that means that 30% are getting results and the other 70 is still looking for help.
Lots of times.
Wow.
Yeah, because they cycle. Autoimmune conditions cycle. So you're going to have a really good time and a really bad. So it drives a doctor crazy because you're really trying to chase after this.
Right.
You're trying to chase the magical primary your blood, TSH levels. Oh, I'm going to get it up, I'm going to get it down. And so many people go, oh, we got it just where you are. But they're like, doc, I feel like crap. Mm-hmm. I feel terrible. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, but it's okay because the blood work says it's okay. Mm-hmm. Dr. Tatis Karazian, who is a dear friend of mine, brilliant guy, the #1 book, New York Times bestseller for the last 5 years. If you go on thyroidbook.com, you're going to see it. It's Why Do I Still Have Thyroid Symptoms When My Labs Are Normal? And if you want the science of what I'm saying here, I had one of my patients bring it to their doctor, who is a specialist in this field, and he looked at it, took the book, and threw it on a chair and said, "That's a bunch of garbage." Mm-hmm. And she goes, "Did you read it?" I'm telling you, it's an education. I don't care. It's not just for the general public. I mean, if you go and you read it, it's a detailed education. If you really want to talk about these binding and conversion issues, it's really amazing. So in the next section here, we're going to talk about some of those defects and what are some of the things you can do for it on your own.
We're speaking with Dr. Bob Olivieri, as we do every Tuesday. You can reach him at his office at 609-465-8585. No, did I say that?
No, 886-8585.
886-8585. Well, we're Dr. Bob. We continue on the program here. Speak with Dr. Bob, and we're in the midst of a series, 9 hidden secrets why you can't lose weight. And very fascinating stuff. We're talking about the thyroid gland today.
Yeah, so I'm going to summarize what we tried to cover here today. It's a little difficult to just talk about it, but because it's a complicated topic. Mm-hmm. And as I said, if you go to a Feel Great Nate Institute workshop on thyroid, you'll learn this in great detail, and I hopefully I explain it in a very clear manner. But in summary, basically there are multiple thyroid hormone defects. There's 8 of them. So medication's only going to address one of these. So the first defect is your thyroid can be a low-functioning thyroid. The second defect is it can be an over-functioning thyroid. The third one can be a low-functioning pituitary gland that's up in your brain. The next one can be an underconversion of the hormone from T4 to T3. There can be an overconversion of T4 to T3. They can be elevated thyroid binding globulins that we were talking about earlier. There can be a decrease in the thyroid binding globulins, and there can be an actual receptor site resistance at the actual tissue that the thyroid hormone is trying to target. So all of those issues need to be addressed and need to be explored anyway to understand why you're having some of the underlying symptoms. Symptoms like fatigue, anxiety, depression, weight gain despite all like dieting and exercise and the things that you would think you would normally help lose weight. If you have some bloating or diarrhea or constipation or any GI types of problem, greatly affected by thyroid hormone. If you're experiencing hair loss, unexplained hair loss, low libido and sex drive is huge for thyroid hormone and quite often not looked at. And if you're starting to have like multiple mood swings, all of those types of symptoms can be directly related to your thyroid. And despite being on thyroid medication, you still may be experiencing these things. So if you look for those different defects based upon the blood work that we just talked about and some other things that you want to look at, there are some things that you can do to be able to get your life back in order. So that's a program that we offer at Feel Great Nate. We work in conjunction with your medical doctor. We send them reports. We give them all the updates of all the things that we're doing. And hopefully there's hope for people that are out there suffering.
Dr. Bob, we said earlier that we would refer people to your website and how they can get more information and even recap what we've been talking about in the series.
If you go to 9 Hidden Weight Loss Secrets, that's the number 9, hiddenweightloss.secrets.com. You can put your email in and you will get all the past shows that we've talked about and all the future shows. So you just have to opt in for that and you'll get those. Also, if you go to Feel Great in 8 Institute, typed all the way out, Feel Great in 8 Institute.com, you will learn about all the different programs that we offer in our office. And if you ever have any questions, just call the office at 886-8585. We're very helpful there as trying to direct you towards hopefully getting the answers that you're seeking out.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us here, Dr. Bob, again. And again, the series that we're working on right now, it's a 9-part series. What is it again?
9 Hidden Weight Loss Secrets.
All right. So tune in.
.com.
.com for another session here with Dr. Bob Olivieri. Dr. Bob, thanks again for joining us here on the program.
Thanks for having me here, Phil.
It is 98.7 The Coast.